Okay, but did you stop and say, hey, it's me?
No, it's so funny because I hadn't seen them in years. Like, they didn't recognize me. They were like, "You are glowing. What's your secret?" And I said, "Honey, I'm healing." Welcome back, everyone, to Honey, I'm Healing. I'm Renee.
And I'm Irina.
And today, Irina, what are we going to be talking about today?
My favorite topic, nervous system regulation.
It is your favorite topic. I'm so excited to talk more about this with you because I know how passionate you are about nervous system regulation, and I am so excited to hear kind of like what triggered you or prompted you to like really get into this.
Yeah, so what triggered me is triggers, really. So it was like winter of 2022. So like 2.5 years now. And side note, I saw this quote yesterday. Don't know who to give credit to because wasn't paying attention. It said, "Are you really healed, or is there no one around to trigger you?" Something like that. And that like is exactly why I even learned about nervous system regulation, because let me tell you, when I got divorced like 6 years ago, I thought I had done the work, which I did. But there's only so much work you can do on your own.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it happens with someone else who triggers wounds you think you healed or you've thought you've healed. And then they become the catalyst. Well, hopefully you have a partner who's very, very attuned to your wounds in the sense or triggers, and then helps you navigate and is the catalyst to heal them. So long story short, got divorced, and I went through, I'm going to say that again. I'm getting like anxious talking about it.
We're going to be practicing nervous system regulation as we're talking about these things because they are triggering. You know, telling your story and your testimony about this is triggering, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's a safe space for hard conversations.
Yeah, and I won't, you know, something for you guys, like this is also so like nerve-wracking for us and for me, like to be vulnerable with our personal stories on here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
especially because they're like in both cases for us, they're still so fresh and raw. Yeah. And like both of us in some way or another are still walking out what we're healing from.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I won't get too deep into it, but you know, I did get divorced, and one of the biggest wounds was being betrayed. And that hurt. That freaking hurt. So, but like once you move on and heal from it, you think like, oh, I'm fine. Like, I no longer feel this pain from the hurt that this person has inflicted on me. So you think you're good. But if we have experienced something where, and it doesn't even have to be like, I guess it's all relative how major it is to some people, but if we've experienced some sort of trauma, we will be triggered in the future, obviously.
I think that triggers are obviously something that a lot more people are opening up about. I mean, when I scroll on TikTok now, I see trigger warning on things or whatever, and a lot of people are a lot more sensitive and cognizant of that, which is a good thing, I think. But we're talking more about triggers like physiologically, that it's not necessarily just a distressing topic. It's something that we feel physically and that have physiological symptoms of an experience that we've ourselves have endured or lived through. So with that being said,
so 2022, and you get to be with someone long enough, you know, you're out of that honeymoon phase, and you're learning a lot about each other, and you don't have those love goggles on, if that makes sense. Like, you see them as the person that they are, and they see you as the person that they are. So anyways, that's where a lot of uncovering happens in the rough patch. And there were things that triggered me, you know, and he was so amazing through it all because he understood, like, okay, she's not actually being triggered by what. She's not actually distressed by, like, the reality of what's going on is the perception of the past replaying. So it was really affecting us. And I went and got a therapist for like 2 months just to work on these triggers because therapy is expensive. It was like 3 months of therapy. But, you know, I was in a place where I was ready to listen, ready to be coachable and aware. So my therapist at the time, he, you know, I would talk to him about one thing, and they're so amazing this way because they would be like, okay, but let me tell you about this. And like, not once did he try to solve my problems, where I would come to him and be like, how do, you know, I change the way I view this, or how that, like, how do I get to a point to where, like, I never have to be triggered by this again? Because if you're constantly being triggered by something, you get to the point to where, like, you feel like you're failing. Like, oh my gosh, I thought I've healed through this. I thought I've already processed all of this. So he was like, hold on, tell me how you feel in your body when that goes on. So he went down to the root of it. And then that's when I had my aha moment, when he explained how to regulate yourself, your nervous system, after experiencing a traumatic event. And that's where it started for me.
I love that. Yeah, deep breath.
That's like a lot to say. So
yeah. I love that he went to the root of it. And first of all, what a great therapist that he wasn't trying to solve your problem for you. He was just like, no, I'm going to let you figure it out on your own. And I'm going to guide you maybe a little bit, but I'm going to let you come to the conclusion on your own. That's a good therapist.
Yes, because you understand things and they seem so much more like big to you when you can get to that revelation on your own. Because it's not a revelation if someone else is telling you it majority of the time.
Yeah. Like, you can hear something 8,000 times, and, you know, when you find it for yourself, it's so much louder and so much more profound. And I've found that even too in therapy, where I'll be processing something with my therapist and she'll say the same thing over and over and over again, and then I'll kind of have that aha moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody's right and I'm ignorant and I was just in La La Land or something.
How you can read the same Bible verse over and over the life, you know, your lifespan, and then at age 14 it hits one way, at age 29 it hits another.
Yeah. It's wild. It's all wild. So how does the trigger feel in your body though? Like, what kinds of symptoms do you get when you know that you're dysregulated, or when you're starting to feel that kind of come on? How does that manifest in your body?
So typically hot, heart pounding, you know, and these are things I explained to him. I feel it like right here, like in the core of my body. Like, it feels not right. I don't feel centered and I don't feel grounded or secure. Secure is a good word to use for
Secure is the foundation of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so that's physiologically. How about you?
For me, I think a lot of it is a lot of my dysregulation stems from being really overstimulated. And that's something that kind of coexists with dissociation for me, because I have spent well over the last 10 years just chronically dissociated from my body. And that was a really hard realization that I learned in therapy recently, was how long have I been disconnected from my body, and then being plugged back into it and feeling all of these things again and hearing all of, you know, just feeling everything again. And it was a lot, but that kind of led to me being overstimulated. So I'm really sensitive to sounds and to light, and like fluorescent light, I can't do it. I mean, first of all, it doesn't do anybody any favors, so I don't understand
No,
why it's
that's why we don't
why
go to
it's even a
Walmart.
thing. Nobody looks great in fluorescent light, so like maybe we just need to get rid of them. I don't know. And then the other thing is noise. If there's a lot of noise pollution for me, so say for instance at work, we have a Bluetooth speaker that we use that will play, and that's in the cubicle directly in front of mine, and then there's one probably 4 or 5 cubicles away, and they're both playing different songs, and it just drives me absolutely insane. And I get really overstimulated sometimes to the point where I have to physically get up and walk away and go into the conference room or something. And those are all skills, and we'll kind of get into that in a little bit. But I also feel this emotional flooding, and it normally manifests as either rage or irritability. Again, that kind of goes back to feeling my emotions again, and kind of reconnecting with the fact that those are really common with people who have ADHD, and just kind of figuring out what the context is of, am I dysregulated, or is this my neurotypical brain, you know? And then the other one is just general disorganization or restlessness. So one thing that I've noticed is my house will just become trashed. And I heard it said once before that a messy mind is a messy home. And I've noticed how true that's been for me, even as I've been healing too, where I can generally tell the state of my internal well-being based off of the tidiness of my home. And if I can't
Yeah.
physically check in with myself or have a mental inventory, I have a external reminder of, hey, you know, that cup's been in the sink for way longer than it should be. I'm not even going to say how long, because it's going to make me feel shame, and we don't need to do that. But, you know, just
Do
things like
those
that.
physical
And
reminders work?
yeah. And so that's kind of how it manifests in my body. A lot of it is, again, kind of like what you had mentioned, that bubbling up and that hotness, and just feeling like I'm going to explode. And sometimes it's just waking up feeling that way. Sometimes it's not even because I'm triggered by something. A lot of it's just because I'm suppressing an emotion or something like that. So it kind of all flows back into the conversation that we had last week, where we were talking about generationally kind of how things are correlated with between our family or things of that nature too, just how we're experiencing things in a family body or family way. And I think a lot of that actually stems back from how I was taught to regulate my nervous system too.
So you said you dissociate. I like completely attach. And I'm like, solve this now. Make me feel okay now. I cannot handle another 30 seconds not being in harmony or not fixing whatever the problem is, or not healing my trigger. I cannot sit in the pain.
Yeah. I think if it's for me, I think if it's something that only affects me, I dissociate, because that's kind of my way of deferring it, which we can get into as well, because there's a lot of things on DBT that I want to talk about with that as well. But I love that you kind of brought up self-preservation of that, because it's so true how you and I are so different in that way, where I will generally not rush to fix something right away, and it's just because I want to not connect with how I'm feeling in that moment. Whereas you are like, yeah, you want to just get it done with. You want to process it and send it on its way.
Yeah, and I wonder why we do that. I wonder how we got to doing that, like why that became the normal for each of us.
Do you think that your parents were welcoming of you holding an emotion in your body? Or maybe that's just a testament to the fact that you've grown and healed a lot. And maybe you've dealt with people that have been in my realm of I'm gonna float away for a minute and I'll come back to this when I'm ready. And you know how annoying that is.
No, I don't know, because I think back to conflict in my childhood and I was always very reactive. It was never welcoming with a calm presence. So maybe it's because I don't like that internal and external conflict that I feel like if this prolongs anymore, like I cannot function. So I don't know. Gosh, more to heal and think about.
We're just shining that flashlight onto things to continue to working on, but that's fine. I'm really thankful that Irina loves me so much and wants me to learn and grow more in the scientific definitions of things and explanations of things, because she really honors the fact that I have a curious mind. So she let me kind of figure out and research what this looks like scientifically in our bodies. So here it goes. We have two different stems basically of our nervous system. We have our central nervous system and our peripheral nervous system. And we're going to really be talking about our peripheral nervous system. That's where regulation really stems from. Central nervous system is your brain and all of those things, whereas peripheral nervous system is kind of that highway that connects everything together. It's the big one, personally, I think. So then out of your peripheral nervous system, you have your somatic nervous system and your autonomic nervous system. And your somatic nervous system controls voluntary activities. Your autonomic nervous system is then broken down into two. And you know what? I love that our nervous system is like this, because I love bullet points. And I feel like that's kind of how our nervous system is kind of operating. It's like a little map, and I love that. And it just goes to show how complex everything is. But our autonomic nervous system is split into our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. So our sympathetic nervous system regulates fight or flight, and it prepares our body for stressful or really energy exerting activities. Our parasympathetic nervous system works to conserve energy, and it signals our body to conserve energy while we're sleeping or relaxing. Yeah, that's more of our energy conservation resting place. So then we're going to talk about polyvagal theory, and I'm going to kind of throw some things out front and we'll loop it all back together, I promise. So the polyvagal theory was really kind of introduced in 1995 by a man called Stephen Porges. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but he kind of made this connection in theory that proposes that the evolution of human autonomic nervous system provides the framework for adaptive behavioral strategies. So why should I care about this, basically? His work really solidifies the fact that our internal feelings are more than just our mental feelings, that they actually kind of go hand in hand, and that there's a lot of feedback between our brain and the sensations that we're feeling. So out of the polyvagal theory, there's 3 different layers to this. And this kind of goes back to what Irina had said earlier about safety. So there's social engagement, which is the one that you want to be in. That's the chill spot. That's you don't perceive any threats whatsoever.
It's being able to speak with someone else, cortex to cortex.
Yeah. And the part of your vagus nerve that is activated in social engagement is the one that controls your facial expressions and your voice. So that actually really does solidify social, that you're able to engage with other people and I don't still quite really understand the vagus nerve. There's a lot to it. That's a
A
whole
lot.
session in and of itself. So I'm giving very, very, very generalized things right now. But the second layer to polyvagal theory is fight or flight. And then the third is freeze. And I love freeze. I live there. So social engagement is the activation of the ventral vagal complex, which, like I kind of said, is that place of facial expressions, voice. So when our nervous system becomes dysregulated, one of the first things that I learned was that our voice starts to go flat, and so do our facial expressions, which I didn't really think about.
Yeah, they do. If I reflect on myself, that's so true.
Yeah, where you're just kind of like, but when we're in this state or environment, we're calm, we're connected, we're settled, grounded, curious, open, compassionate, and mindful and in the present. Fight or flight, this is the only part of this three-prong theory that doesn't necessarily involve the vagus nerve. So this fight or flight is really about movement and mobility, and we're likely to feel rage, anger, irritation, frustration, panic, fear, anxiety, worry, and concern. And then the third part's freeze. And in this place, that's when you start to get dysregulated energy balance. This is like all hands on deck. This is a super big perceived threat. And this is where this affects the part of your vagus nerve. It's called your dorsal vagal complex that regulates energy balance, lungs, heartbeat, stomach, and aids digestion. And so there's a lot of, I know this from personal from personal testimony of, that's when your stomach starts to get upset, or your heartbeat starts to get really fast, or your lungs, like your breathing starts to hitch and hike up.
Freeze, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
So you'll start to feel dissociated, numbness, depression. You'll have a raised pain threshold. You'll feel helplessness, shame. You'll shut down. You'll feel hopelessness, or you'll feel trapped.
When we were in Montana
Mm-hmm.
and it was snowing, we got to Yellowstone and the Tetons. And the day we got there, it snowed and it shut down for the week, for the season. Well, we were like, whatever, we're going to explore Montana. And we had like this Jeep Wrangler, 4x4. And like the snow had stopped. We had driven to these hot springs 10 minutes away from our hotel. And while we were there, it started snowing. And on the drive to the hot springs, it's beautiful. You're on the edge of a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
So beautiful. You're going up a mountain, like stunning. Like you look down though, like that's terrifying. Well, on the way back, it had iced over. It took us 2 hours to drive back, going like 2 miles an hour. I was bloated for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Like the amount of prayer that was coming out of me, and like
I'm
me
sure.
just holding Haven's hand in the back and Matt, and like really thought that was going to be our last moments. Yeah, I was bloated for a whole week. I was in 100% freeze. Like, this is it.
Yeah. That's crazy. And what a way to ruin your trip, to be bloated for the rest of your trip. Ugh, that's the worst. No,
And
but
I never get bloated, ever. So
I don't like you right now. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I love you. No, I get really bloated, and that's one of the biggest things too. And I'm curious to kind of figure out, this is just me thinking in real time, kind of what the connection is with cortisol levels as well with
Me
all
too.
of this.
I want to know more about that.
Because I know that when I'm really stressed, I get really bloated. And I was reading a lot about, so I have a lot of symptoms right now of POTS, and I've fainted quite a bit in the last year. I've probably 3 or 4 times now. And one of the things that they're talking about was syncope, which is a fancy word for fainting or feeling lightheaded. But when I was doing research on the vagus nerve, it was talking about vasovagal syncope, which is like your body is, your vagus nerve is basically being overstimulated enough to the point where you faint. So it's crazy to me that all of this is kind of full circle in that. And
you are going through a lot of stress right now, though. So
yeah,
yeah.
especially like, I mean, personally and in work, and just stressors of life. I think a lot of people can probably relate to that. But yeah, I mean, and it's crazy because all of my labs would come back normal and everything. So, you know, I'm like, I'm not thinking like it's a spiritual attack or, you know, anything like
No.
that. Or like,
No, Renee, we don't go there.
I mean, it could be in some way, shape, or form. I'm not dismissing it, but like, I know that there's a physiological reason for it. And so I'm curious to kind of continue to learn more about this and everything. So
That was a good lesson.
it was. It really
That
was.
was a lot of good info.
Class
guys.
is dismissed. I'm just kidding.
No, I learned a lot too, because you know, when I think of nervous system regulation, I think of just those three parts of your brainstem, your limbic system, and your cortex, and not being able to get to the cortex.
Well, and your vagus nerve is like this giant system of nerves. It's like it goes from like basically your the back of your neck, like your brainstem, all the way down your spine, and it connects so many different things. So it's crazy how, or it's not crazy, but it just really genuinely shows the connection of if you're having a mental conniption, I guess is the word that came to mind. But if you're having a mental issue, it really does affect you physiologically. And it does affect your nervous system, because whether or not the threat is real, your brain perceives it as real. And then your body just follows suit. And so, yeah, everybody just needs to be kind about that. And I think that kind of gives you permission to feel without judging yourself. This is just how my body is feeling this. This is experience, like what I'm experiencing right now, and not judging yourself for having that experience. I think that's something that I've really had to work on.
Yeah. I wish more people knew, though, that like the symptoms that you have in your body can be because of an internal state that is not regulated. And this is where America can do well with a little bit more holistic approaches or holistic teaching within our medical field. In my opinion, that is my opinion, because I think that in America, we tend to get like the Band-Aids for it and not to the root of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it would be so much simpler if there were a pill that we could take and it would just regulate our nervous system for us, right? But what good will that do long term?
Yeah, no.
I'm not a big pill person. I don't subscribe to that.
Are you talking about like medication for anxiety?
Yeah.
Depression?
So I think like Americans in general, our Western medicine is very pro pharmaceutical and all of this, and I think that at least in my research and in my experience just talking with people about vagus nerve and regulating your nervous system, it's something that you physically have to walk through. It's a fire that you have to go through, and you have to feel everything, and you have to figure out your triggers for yourself. It's not something that there's no one size fits all problem solving for it.
But I do think that like medication can very much help
Oh, I do too. I believe in medication.
to like help people get there. But like what I mean is like doctors don't talk about, well, hey, we're going to give you these medications to allow you to function your day-to-day life. but also in order to cooperate with like what's going on inside, here's what we should be working on too. And like
Yeah.
our medical system's not multifaceted
No,
like
no,
that. You
no.
don't
And
typically
I don't want that
have
to come across as like I'm not anti-medication. Obviously, I'm on ADHD medication,
no,
and I'm
I knew you weren't.
yeah.
But like
But
it's the go-to answer in
it is,
America.
and I think that that's kind of what I was getting at, where I feel like
Yeah.
people want instant results, and healing isn't that. Healing is hard work, and
Yep.
it is unfortunately a long game and not a short game, but it's so worth it. So
Yeah.
how does all of this kind of circle back? How do I justify the fact that I confuse both nervous system regulation and emotional regulation in my brain? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that our emotional reactions are kind of what I said before, they're seen as perceived threats by our brain, and then our body kind of deals with that and cycles through that. And we kind of touched on co-parenting a little bit. So I think a lot of our responses are learned, especially in early childhood. And Irina, as a parent, I'm sure you have a lot you could say on this too. But just, I look back at the way that I was taught to regulate my emotions when I was too young to understand what was going on in my body, where my parents were the external ones. So it's kind of like when you fall and you immediately want to cry because your body's like, hey, something might be wrong, but then your parents are like, get up, it's fine. I think that a lot of people don't process that experience of how they were taught to handle their own emotion or something that they experienced.
Yeah. That's good. In my master's program, I got my master's in behavior analysis. And specifically, like when you are working with kids with disabilities, helping them learn, they're not as connected to themselves as someone who may not have a developmental or disability be. And we were taught, like, when they do get hurt, oh, you hurt your knee, like so specifically, you hurt your knee and now you are crying. There are tears coming out. You are hurt. Like we would literally say that to help them get connected. And that's something I still do now with like my kids. And I think that like I never got that. Like you're right. I got the get up, you're fine, you're fine. Like what you're doing, what that can lead to, in my opinion, is not allowing that opportunity for a child to be connected to what they're experiencing. It's like it's teaching you not to trust your feelings. Oh, this is really hurting, but I'm being told this is okay.
100%. Well, and it's teaching you to dismiss what the cues that your body is giving you of what just happened. Let me take a second and just recuperate and take a second. Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you learned and worked through things like that. Because when you are dysregulated, I learned a lot about this. There's a lot of research behind it that your brain can't logically process what's going on because it's such an emotional overdrive. It's your capability of logical reasoning goes completely out the window when you hit that point of freeze or when you hit that hyper threat threshold. So the fact that you go back to the basics of these are the facts. You fell and you scraped your knee. That's why you have tears. You're taking it back to that. And I think that a lot of us kind of, in a way, have to co-parent and co-regulate our inner child and go back to those parts of ourselves that were broken or just the fundamentals that we learned in our childhood and kind of have to rein that back in and relearn.
Yeah, well, so think of that example specifically. Like a child falls, he hits his knee, he hurts his knee, helping him say, you hurt your knee, you're bleeding, you're crying, you're in pain, ouch. ouch, that hurts. Like, they're overwhelmed. They're not thinking logically. They're in fight or flight mode. What you're doing right there and then too is teaching them that, like, what I'm feeling is happening in the present. And that sets the groundwork for the future, because a lot of the things we feel and react to really are things that have happened already. And it's just the system that our brain has created to then, again, when we experience this, we're actually reacting out of a past experience.
That's so good.
You're connecting what's happening in the present and teaching them to trust the moment and what they're feeling and themselves. So I think if you grew up around parents who also had a deregulated nervous system, that may look like being very reactive, on edge, may feel like you're walking on eggshells around your parents. You're probably also more hypervigilant to their moods and behaviors and words. So, like, they might not even be inflicting a punishment on you, but if they, you know, had a certain look that they did in the past when you were punished, you're going to be hyper vigilant to that moment. It could also feel like you might do the same thing you do all the time, but you never know which reaction you may get from them. Yeah, which is like walking on eggshells.
I resonate with so much of that.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, and it to a scary degree where I'm feeling like I'm back in. It wasn't even necessarily my parents. It was the combination of not even in my own household, but households that I went into. I remember I had a friend growing up whose mom, she and her mom would get in like screaming fights in the car. And I remember sitting there just like, if I ever talk to my mom that way, you know, but it's things like that. It's experiences that you live through that nobody walks you through, or like you just kind of take those in, and then you're like, what do I go from here? What do I do from here with that? And I think it's figuring out that that's just with that person I didn't feel safe, or like in this circumstance I didn't feel safe. And that's kind of what rewiring that looks like.
And like it happening one time, you know, probably won't affect you as much. And like, well, like seeing your friends fight one time probably won't affect the way you relate to your friends in the future. But growing up around it and being in a constant state of that environment.
Yeah, it's like micro PTSD. It's micro traumas all over and over and over again. What are some things that you do to regulate your nervous system?
I like this is I will like just hold myself tight, feel some pressure, and like just rock yourself, just to focus on your movements. Just
bring yourself back into the present.
Yeah, just something to feel safe. Like I also like putting my palm behind my neck and like just cradling myself, or putting my palm on my heart and just tapping, giving some rhythmic movement in my body to like calm, kind of like when we're rocking a baby. It just comes so naturally to do that.
That makes a lot of sense. You're stimulating your vagus nerve when you put your hand behind your neck.
Oh, yes. I also had this on here, and I know it's something similar to what you do. Stand up and jump and shake your body. It's all about like that rhythmic movement.
Yeah, it's movement for the sake of moving and not thinking about it. That's so. Irina and I kind of talked about this a little bit before, but one of the things that I do is I'll dance. And for those of you who have seen me dance, I apologize. It's not pretty. But I call them Holy Spirit dance parties, because I put on worship music and I'll just dance around my living room, and you feel free. You feel like moving your body just kind of brings you back into this moment, and I think that mixed with the fact that it feels like prayer for me, or it feels like meditation for me, I think that that kind of helps me zoom out a little bit more too. But some of the other things that I do are I listen to brown noise. Have you ever
What's
heard of
that?
brown noise?
No.
There are all kinds of different kinds of noise. You know, there's white noise, there's pink noise, there's violet noise. There's all these different, they're like different decibel levels, but
Yes.
and they're high or low frequency. So brown noise literally feels like my brain is being massaged. It's amazing. But
I'm
it
gonna try
also,
it tonight.
you should definitely listen to it. They have hour-long, like, they have like 10-hour-long YouTube videos of it. But it sounds like when you're on an airplane, and just that kind of hum or like air noise. And I'll have that on when I need some kind of stimulation in the background, but I can't listen to music, and I just have it on just to kind of like be present with myself, and I just like literally lay there. Other than that, I really, really like having a daily routine, and that kind of brings in 75 medium for us, and one of why we wanted to do that. And I did 75 hard last year. It changed my life. I noticed physical results, but the emotional and mental results were what sealed the deal for me. It taught me that I was capable of so much more than I could have ever imagined. And I think it really just showed how capable I am of doing hard things. But so yeah, we're doing that we're recording on April 29th. So we'll be going through July 13th. But follow us on Instagram and all of those things to learn more about that, because I'm
That
so
would be
excited.
so cool to see other people join in too. This is keeping us accountable too.
Yeah, let's be real. That's the only reason we're doing it with each other, because if I were left to my own devices, I would have been like, that's a cute idea, Renee. That's a really cute idea.
Yeah.
But
But it's not gonna happen. Yeah.
no,
Same.
we're doing it this time.
Same. Yeah. So follow along for 75 medium.
Yeah,
And
we'll be
posted
putting
our-
stuff on TikTok too,
Yeah.
all of our socials. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.
Yes. Bye, guys.
Bye.